Okay, I'm going to start this video with a bit of an announcement. This has been a really big decision for me and something that I hope you guys can support. It's not been an easy decision, but ultimately I want to do what's best for me. So I've decided to start wearing a different hat in my videos. I purchased this hat yesterday. I like it a lot. I know it's not what you guys are used to, but that's just, again, I'm just doing what I think is best for myself and for the channel. Anyway, welcome back everybody. My name is Tucker, and in today's video, we're talking about the Denver Nuggets, a team that in my opinion has been one of the biggest surprises of the entire postseason with this crazy run that they've been on that unfortunately came to an end last night. And for me personally, I really wanted the Nuggets to win last night and just extend the series further and further just because I want more basketball. Unselfishly, I wanted the Nuggets to win, but unfortunately, that is where their run ended. But in this video, we're going to be talking about where this team can go from here, because certainly there is a lot of promise with this roster, and the legitimacy that this postseason run adds to this group certainly gives me a lot more confidence in them moving forward to be a contender, certainly more than I had before these playoffs started. So that's what we're going to talk about in today's video. But really quickly, before we get started, if you enjoy content like this, then consider subscribing. I upload basically every single day. Leaving a like rating is a great way to let me know that you're enjoying the content, and it helps out the video a ton. And then lastly, you can come hang out with me on Twitch at Spolo_TD. I've been playing a ton of Warzone. I've played over 30 hours on stream this week already. I've had a lot of you guys come over there and hang out. If that's something you want to do, I'd love to have you over there. With that said, let's go and get started. Okay, so quickly, let's kind of talk about the Lakers series and how the Nuggets season ended up ending. So I think at the end of the day, it became pretty clear that the Lakers are just a better team than the Nuggets right now. And they had their opportunities in the series, and they unfortunately just couldn't take advantage of them. But again, I think the most important point of this playoff run isn't that they made it to the conference finals, isn't that they, came back from multiple 3-1 deficits. It's the legitimacy that it provides this core. And we've seen things like this catapult a team into a different category than they normally would have been because of how legitimized they feel, how legitimized the front office feels about this core and about this group. To make the conference finals in the manner that they did, I can't overstate how big of a deal that is for Denver. And now they have some interesting moves to consider this offseason. So they've got a couple of big free agents. They've got Paul Millsap, Mason Plumlee, and they've got Torrey Craig. And if all of those guys walk, they're only looking at about $7 million in salary cap space, assuming that the salary cap stuff stays the same, which with the league being suspended, we don't know if that's the case. But all I can do is use the old numbers. And if we're using those old numbers, they'll be at about $7 million in space. And that's a problem because they're going to be losing out on 3 pretty critical rotation players for them. Not to mention that Jerami Grant has about a $9 million player option for this offseason as well, then in my opinion, he's likely to decline. Let's talk about the other 3 guys first, and then we'll get to Grant, because I think he has become a really critical part of this team. So you could convince yourself that the Nuggets don't really need to re-sign any of these 3 guys. I think that it makes more sense to make sure that you're bringing back Torrey Craig, because he is a wing guy that, when he can shoot, is a nice player to have on the floor as a defender. And you could talk yourself into the fact that you have replacements for both Plumlee and Millsap in the front court, and Jerami Grant, who we're going to talk about a little bit, who's obviously a very good player, and Bol Bol, who has shown plenty of potential. If you wanted to talk yourself into it not being worth it to re-sign those guys and to pay them, I think that would make at least a little bit of sense. And ultimately, it's going to be up to the Nuggets to kind of decide what they want to do. But if they bring back all 3 of these guys and Jerami Grant, they're going to get really close to, if not over, the luxury tax territory, which is an issue for a couple of different reasons, but it makes the roster really rigid and tough to make moves after that. And so I would imagine that they're probably only going to be re-signing at max 2 of these 3 guys between Craig, Millsap, and Plumlee. And then that way that leaves them space to also re-sign Jerami Grant and ideally not be at the luxury tax threshold either. But let's go ahead and talk about Jerami Grant, because I think he has been such a critical player for this roster, specifically defensively. He's a guy that they haven't had in the past, someone in the front court that has the athleticism to guard some of the better wings and forwards in the league, and has been such a critical piece of this playoff run. And I think it's really likely that he's going to decline this $9 million player option for this offseason, because I think worst case, he's a $9 million a year player, and he can get that on a longer term worst case scenario, right? The only other way that I could see this going is if he's like, nah, you know what? I'll play the year out on $9 million. I'll have another great year next year, and everybody's going to have cap space in 2021. Maybe I can take advantage of it then. That's a bit of a riskier player, but in my opinion, I think he's going to decline the option and get a slightly bigger deal and on a longer term. And I think Denver is going to be extremely motivated to re-sign him and bring him back, because they saw what he did for this team in the postseason defensively and things like that. which transitioned me into the team as a whole and what we've learned in this postseason about this Nuggets team. And it's a really, really critical point. And that is that I don't think this team needs another like scoring star type player. I think it's been proven and it's been shown that the Jamal Murray Nikola Jokic combo, especially offensively, is devastating. And you don't really need a third Bradley Beal type guy out there hunting for shots. What you need is solid defenders all the way around those two guys. And that can, even at their younger ages, like 22, 23, and 24, even at those younger ages, that can get you to the conference finals. And I think that's such a critical point and a really nice piece of knowledge to now know about this team moving forward as you're looking to build around them. And what that means for me is if you're looking at potential quote unquote star trades for this team, because I think that's the direction that a lot of people are going to go with this group this offseason, is thinking, okay, they had this really nice run. They've got Porter Jr., they've got Bol Bol, they've got Jokic, they've got Jamal Murray. How can they turn the other pieces into the guy that really puts them over the top? And I don't think Bradley Beal is the direction they should go here. I would look more at someone like Jrue Holiday or someone like Victor Oladipo, players that provide a lot on the defensive end and are still really good offensive players, but they don't need the basketball all the time to be putting up these big numbers. That, in my opinion, is a much, much better fit. The problem is, I think you're going to have to start looking at trading away someone like Gary Harris in order to make those moves. And Harris has really reclaimed, a lot of value for himself this offseason. Still, the offensive stuff needs improvement, but it's clear that what he provides on the defensive end is exactly what this Nuggets team needs. And if you're going to be trading him away, you're going to be wanting to get a piece back that is at least as good as he is defensively and then provides more offensively as well. The problem for Denver is I don't know where the assets are coming from to trade for someone like Oladipo or like Jrue Holiday, because they gave away their first round pick this year to Oklahoma City in exchange for Jerami Grant. They do have Houston's pick, although that's not hugely valuable. And again, Gary Harris would likely have to be involved here. So technically, I think they could trade like Gary Harris and multiple future firsts for someone like Oladipo or someone like Jrue Holiday, probably more likely. But is that really the move that they should be making? What's wrong with letting this group return basically as is, trying to retain as many people as you can this offseason without approaching that luxury tax threshold, and allowing this group to go together? Michael Porter Jr. is basically untouchable at this point as we're looking at trades and things like that. Bol Bol isn't untouchable, but you'd rather at least see what you have there a little bit more. What's wrong with this group? I don't really see anything wrong with allowing Michael Porter Jr. to develop into that third quote unquote star that this team needs, a third really offensive focal point on the floor, and then going from there, because teams don't really do this anymore. They don't really allow their cores to develop and grow through multiple playoff losses. And I'm really interested to see if, one, that's the route that the Nuggets take, but two, how that affects this team if that is the route that the Nuggets take. And maybe that will become more of the dominant building strategy, is waiting until these guys figure it out in the postseason. This is going back to previous eras in the 80s and the 90s where they allowed players to go through ups and downs in the postseason, and they allowed rosters to lose in the postseason before making these big changes. And it was very cyclical. And once it was your turn, finally that team rose to the top in the Western Conference. And I think we're seeing that once this Lakers thing fizzles out, once LeBron finally goes on a bit of a downturn, you don't know what's going to happen with the Clippers and the Mavs and all these other teams, but clearly the Nuggets are one of the best teams in the West with this roster right now. So what is the mindset? What is the reasoning behind messing with that, with messing with that quote unquote chemistry, if you want to call it that? I don't see a point in messing with that right now. And certainly there are moves that they can make if they wanted to, but I think the smart thing to do, and what I would imagine they're going to end up doing, is keeping everything pretty much the same, bringing back as many guys as they can this offseason without paying too much money. And then once some salary cap relief shows up in 2022 with Gary Harris and Will Barton's contracts coming off the books, then maybe you can look to make some more drastic moves as some of the role players kind of grow out of their contracts, move to other places. It becomes a little bit more difficult to continually bring those guys back year after year. But I think up until that point, this team is fine. They're a really good team. They have young players that are going to continue to get better and grow and develop. They have pieces that fit together with Grant and Harris's defense along with Murray and Jokic's offense. If Porter Jr. can become a guy that it looks like he can be, that makes this team even scarier. Bol Bol is still kind of floating out there as a potential ceiling raiser for this group as well. They're in an awesome position, and I can't wait to see what the Nuggets do moving forward. Not necessarily with their roster moves, but just as a team and how these guys continue to grow and develop, which is different for me. Normally I'm looking forward to the roster moves, but for them, I think it's going to be all about internal improvement. It's going to be really interesting to watch, and I can't overstate how big of a deal it is that they made the conference finals this year the way that they did. Because if they lost in the first round to Utah, which they were very close to doing, our perception of this team would be entirely different. They're not a postseason team. They're fake contenders. They're nothing. To get to the conference finals the way that they did changes everything for this group. I'm excited to see what they do moving forward. And yeah, there you have it. That is going to be the end of today's video, and I thank you all very much for watching. Once again, my name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, then be sure to check out the boxes on screen. Thanks again, and I'll see you all next time.